All right, and welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Friday, September 16th, 2022. Not done so already, give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, here, so we had a pretty good gap down in the markets. Q's down 1% here. The S&P trailing right around the same area. And really just a sideways grind today. Very typical options X type action, open here, little fade, little rally, then a grind sideways, and then we're getting a little bit of a bid here into the final hour or so, and then kind of fading off that 50 moving average here on the 10-minute. It looks to me like we're just sitting at a 385 pin on the spiders, maybe a 288, 289 there on the triple Qs. And I really hate these OpEx Fridays, especially quarterly, because, we had a pretty good gap down today. And obviously, I said in the video last night, we could see some waterfall selling. That's kind of what I was seeing, some cracks, with bonds and gold kind of telling us that. And of course, we got the sell-off today, but, no follow through. And it's like how much of this is OpEx related and how much of it isn't. You've got strength in the semiconductors, which were actually green twice today, and they're basically just hovering underneath the flat line. But then you have, the transports that are getting drilled by FedEx here at new 52-week lows. This is a brutal sell-off here. Was down over 6% at one point, now just down 5.5% here. You see FedEx there opening and getting low as, let's see, 155 there to the penny. We talked about that 160 level yesterday. And, we gap below that, and there's the weekly time frame. But it looks like it's starting to get a bid off of that, so we'll see if that gets a little bit of relief here. But getting pounded there. Adobe we talked about last night as well. That one gapping down another 3.5%, 4% there on the day for Adobe. So that is really weighing down on IGV. And, cloud is back down into that little trend line there. So again, some weakness here, and you do have a possible little head and shoulders that triggered there on IGV. We talked about Microsoft as well. That's confirmed that trend line breakdown. And bottom line here, speaking of trend line breaks, we talked about this last night. We've definitely confirmed the breakdown here today with the gap down. Now, again, could we rally up Monday? Could, we gap back up Monday because of, options X today? Could all this mean nothing? It's possible. Usually markets don't bottom on a Friday or top on a Friday. So usually you're going to get some type of continuation here. But it's just so hard to make a lot out of it because you can clearly tell that this is it's a total theta burn day. And did they gap it down here and just pin it because that's where they needed it, or did they gap it down because we needed to gap down because of FedEx or whatever, or Adobe? It's hard to tell. It's hard to make a lot out of it. The bottom line is the trend is down below all four major moving averages here on the daily, and we did break that trend line. So, and we still have room to go, I think, to satisfy that downside target we talked about. So if we're looking at that 378 handle, it's really right there is your 7.5, and then there's your gap fill there. I believe we do need to satisfy that at some point. It's just hard to say right now, what it's really going to do here. And we do have a triggered head and shoulders here as well. So there's your left shoulder, right shoulder, and then that is triggered. So that would bring you down to, let's see, 40. Yeah, that would bring you down to 350 if that were to play out. So what you don't want to see, though, is a daily close above that white line there. That would kind of negate that pattern. You'd expect this to be resistance now as well. So 390 will be resistance, and then obviously on the upside, that upsloping trend line will also be resistance. But again, let's watch here in the final. I don't think we're ever going to get closer. Got about 20 minutes left, but if we were to somehow get back above 388.42, that would give you, that would essentially save the market on a weekly closing basis from that one pivot that I talked about yesterday. But this is an engulfing reversal on the weekly. So that, everybody thought, oh, here we go. This is it, the higher low, low is in, pull back, higher low. And bears really just slammed the door shut this week. Pretty good volume there on that sell-off there. Much higher than last week's volume as well. So definitely note that. But that's an engulfing reversal on the weekly. So again, just to reiterate, you guys know my thesis here. I think we're going lower no matter what. But that weekly candle really kind of cements it to me here. It's just that in the short term, do they bounce us back up on Monday? It's hard to tell. It's such a mixed bag here with OpEx. Some things are down, some sectors are up. It's kind of all over the map here. But overall, bottom line trend is down, and that's an ugly, ugly weekly candle there. Let's look at the Qs. Again, down 83 basis points here. And again, that's going to confirm below this 294.61 pivot and, below this pivot as well on a weekly basis. Same pattern here, weekly engulfing. Take a look here how you came up. You hit this white line last week, bounced up, retested that blue trend line, and now it's acting as resistance, whereas before it was resistance, we broke out, and now we back checked it again. So that is getting hit here, and you're getting a nice fade off of that level. So important to see that there. You do have a few levels down here around 280. Let's take a look at where the 7.5 retrace is on Qs. Yeah, so we basically hit that 7.5 retrace today on the Q, so that may be why the market's bidding up a little bit here, as you do have a little bit of natural support there. But overall, the weekly pattern, the more dominant one, is not a good look here for the markets. Let's look at the Russell. Russell's actually hanging on here. It's holding on to support, so that is a little bit stronger here. You still have basically an engulfing reversal. They are going to save the lows a little bit, but an ugly candle. No way, either way you slice it or dice it, with heavier volume, much heavier than last week as well. So again, markets, looking weak here, and bulls really haven't showed up this week to kind of confirm that push. We do have the FOMC next week. That is Wednesday. We also have VIX-spiration on Wednesday, coincidentally enough. And, they're still selling calls above 27. You can see there, they're not letting it break out yet. But, after that VIX-spiration, we got to watch out here for volatility. The market may get a little quiet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I wouldn't rule that out, as the market kind of just waits on the Fed. But overall, again, doesn't really change my thesis here. As I think we do have lower to go regardless. Anyways, here, semiconductors, again, we noticed that was on the stronger side. That is scratching out a small gain here. We got about 15 minutes left in the day. So a nice little uptick there for the semis. Intel, actually, I thought about buying this here earlier today. I think this can go a little bit lower, but that did get through that 29 handle and has had a nice little recovery. So that's helping out the SMH. NVIDIA also notably up 1.4%. This has been strong intraday. You see kind of a up move, then kind of a rounded bottom there. So NVIDIA a little bit on the stronger side, which is helping out the semiconductors as well. But overall, they've been weak lately. And I mean, this has had, we talked about this last week. This had a really good chance to bounce here, and it just hasn't done anything. So it still has a good weekly support level. Right in here, there's that 200 moving average. But, this needs to really show us something right now. Pretty soon. Otherwise, it's not a good look here. But anyways, IGV, we talked about that a little bit. That's kind of holding on to that 266, 265 level. So that white trend line, that did trigger a head and shoulder pattern, which can send it a lot lower, but we'll watch that neckline there. You get a daily close above that. That will negate that pattern. But IGV under pressure here, down 2% with the continued weakness in Adobe, biotech. Still been a stronger sector here, but down 3% on the day as well. Still not a bad pullback pattern there for XBI, but it's got to get going now if it's really going to get some legs to it. And then we talked about the transports already as well. Very, very weak here. Dow transports are a leading indicator. Not a good sign to see them down over 5% in one day, considering this is a whole index. FedEx is dragging it down, but this is a whole index here. That's down 6%. New 52-week lows here with heavy volume there. Not a good look for the DJT. Bond yields relatively flat here today. You see the 30-year there, flattish to up as well. The 2 and 10 is back up to 40 bips spread, so not a good look there overall. The 2-year is managing to scratch out a gain here today on the futures, but again, still made a new low today, and the Fed's got to catch up. That's really what it comes down to. The 2-year yield's at about 3.85, and the Fed funds rate's 2.33, so they have work to do, and it's not going to end until they get up there. And if the 2-year yield gets above 4%, that's just even more work for them. So going to continue to watch that. But right now, the bond market isn't really saying the water is safe. And it's really confirming that we have more downside. You see HYG there managing to scratch out a little bit of a gain. TLT here, negative as well. So watching these bonds, that will tell you what's going to happen with the Fed. Anyways. All right, yields, let's go to home builders here. So XHB losing this support level on a weekly basis. So a potential breakdown there for XHB. ITB losing it as well, although it's getting a little bit of a bounce on that 200-week moving average. It did pierce it already once, so it is a little bit less reliable of a support area. But ITB is green in a down market, so we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. And again, this is kind of one of those things where it's like you've got XHB down 75 basis points, ITB green. This is definitely an OPEX thing. You know, like this is almost the same index. ITB just has a few more like retailers in it, but you'd think that they're mostly going to be trading the same, but this is totally an OPEX thing, if you ask me, and that's why you get kind of those wacky tapes sometimes on those, especially quad witching Fridays. VNQ here, red as well, but did have a nice little tail, so down just 20 basis points. Not a terrible day there when you consider everything else. XLF, you know, just looks like everything else. Gap down and a rally back up, down 1%. Won't make too much out of that. And then broker dealers also coming in a little bit, finding a little bit of support there again at that 50 moving average and a potential higher low there. So we'll see what we get next week, but not a terrible look there on XBD, all things considered. Energy here, so crude, again, kind of a quiet day. We talked about the possibility of this kind of going more like a flattish kind of chop into OPEX. I believe that is the case. I think we'll see some type of a move one way or the other in crude next week. We'll see some increased volatility, but I think this kind of sideways choppiness is really OPEX related. So again, not too much to make out of it there. XLE dipping down a little bit, down 2.25, XOP, OYH down 3 and 4% respectively there. So again, it's hard to make too much out of it right now. We'll see what we get next week, and obviously the market keying off the FOMC. Nat gas, I didn't get to talk about this yesterday because I had to do that late video, but this got rejected hard at this red bar high, and it is back below that trend line. So I would be careful with Natty right here. In fact, if you own it, I would honestly stop out right now. That looks weak. That can go down very quickly. That's definitely a rejection, and you just triggered a head and shoulder pattern here, by the way. So look at how great this trend line has been. So I talk about this all the time, but this trend line has been perfect at calling support and resistance. And now this trend line, without me even having to draw a new neckline in, this lines up as a perfect head and shoulder neckline. And that's got a target. Let me just do this real fast. That's about 45. So we'll say 2, 6. Yeah, so that'll take you right back down to about 650. So right down to this area, 650, 675, somewhere in that range. So nat gas has some downside in it. I would be careful with it there. I would consider being a buyer at this area though, if we get down there in the right way. So I do think nat gas will come under some pressure here. You did trigger that pattern today on the close, and a weekly close at that. So be careful with Natty here. I do think there is some downside in the cards potentially. Dollar index, really just a nothing burger, but you still have a nice, beautiful inside bar starting to print here on the daily time frame of the dollar. So we'll continue to watch that. And then getting over to the metals, maybe a fake out here. So gold with a nice little gain, up 40 basis points. It is off the highs. But that breakdown candle, new 52-week lows today, this morning, and then take a look intraday. You can see the GLD on my screen there. As soon as the market opened, just rallied, just ripped higher. So maybe, again, maybe OPEX related. Maybe they wanted it below 1700 for OPEX, and they just wanted to burn out those calls, whatever the case may be. But we're getting a nice recovery today. GDX also leading. Nice little recovery there, up in a down market. Again, could it be OPEX related? Yes. But again, like I keep saying, you have higher lows here still on GDX and lower lows on gold. So GDX is outperforming. That is definitely noteworthy. Silver, beautiful candle here today. I mean, this is everything you want to see. You test the green bar low. You've passed that test and you go right back up into this range. So that is a bullish inside bar on the daily above the 50 and 20 moving average. A little bit more baking in the oven, and this can take off to the upside. Platinum, same kind of thing. Test candle today, beautiful inside pattern. I'd like to see this firm up a little bit more. And again, this can have some serious legs. So I like what I'm seeing from those metals there. Some of the alternate metals, silver and platinum. Palladium on the other side, a little bit more neutral on. That was kind of just flattish to negative today. And then copper, possible higher low here. So nice reversal there. Let's take a look at the weekly. Yeah, so a little inside candle there on the weekly. You want to see it close above that red bar high. But for right now, it is potentially putting in a higher low. So a decent little pop there for spot copper. All right, crypto here. So the merge here, again, I didn't get to talk about this yesterday either, but looks like Ether was kind of a sell the news thing here. So A little bit of a dip yesterday and then continuing to dump down 3% today. You don't want to see it lose this pivot here. And you could, again, speaking of all these head and shoulders patterns, you could really make a case that you've got one right here. Whoops, let me get rid of that line. Let's do a trend line there. So you could make a case you've got you're about to trigger a head and shoulders there, right there on the daily of Ether. So 2026. Yeah, so I mean, you got a 600 points of downside here on Ether. So that would take you pretty much back to the year-to-date lows if that were to play out. But again, kind of a sell the news event there on the merge. Bitcoin is flattish here, but obviously it did fade back this week. Again, I'm not in love with crypto right here, and you guys know the case. I'm still expecting most cryptos to head much lower here, but for right now, they're hanging in there, although I would be careful, especially with Ether, with that pattern. All right, let's flip over to the spiders. Yeah, so basically just kind of hanging in there. Looks like a 385 type pin here. Volatility is coming in a little bit. They're selling the VIX here. Again, it's hard to make too much out of it. It is OPEX week, but we'll see what we get when we open Monday. And again, obviously all eyes will be on the FOMC and VIX expiration next Wednesday. Anyways, guys, going to wrap it up here. You guys take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com. I'll talk to you all next week.